How a Raven Helped Me Find a Murderer by Psychoptic Nerve. I was always a peculiar child and had very few friends growing up. My time was often spent in solitude. While my peers were out at sporting events, school functions, or whatever the majority of middle schoolers do, I was either drawing in my room or walking through the woods behind my house. This became even more true after my father's passing. He died when I was 13. He had simply fallen asleep one night and never woke up. It was ruled a brain aneurysm. I will spare you the shock and confusion that we went through that day. I'm sure you can imagine how awful it was for me and my mother. To make matters worse, a rumor started to circulate in middle school that my mom had killed him. This only further compelled me to avoid my classmates and escape into the wilderness around me. It was the only thing I could do to cope with the situation. I found solace in the trees, going straight from the nightmare that was public school to the serenity of nature. On a chilly February morning, I caught a glimpse of a couple of ravens building a nest together. Struck by their intelligence and the strange croaking calls they made, I checked out books from the library and learned all I could about them. I started attempting to mimic their calls. They would look down at me, puzzled but not alarmed by my presence. Once I started bringing food scraps, they seemed to accept me as a friend, flying down at my feet to feed and occasionally nibbling on my shoes playfully. I started to feel like I was a part of their family, really looking forward to seeing their hatchlings. Unfortunately, this was never to be. On my usual trip out, I began calling to them as I approached. They would always return my calls, but they didn't on this day. I got chills, suddenly realizing there was no sound coming from the woods around me. Something was off. My breath caught, my legs began shaking. As soundlessly as I could, I continued to the raven's nest. Feathers and debris from the nest were scattered on the ground below. Despair washed over me as I realized what had happened. I picked up one of the broken eggs, my heart breaking as I cradled it. I felt I couldn't handle another loss in my life, and this completely broke me. I fell to my knees and wept, disregarding the apparent danger the silent forest was warning me of. A familiar call behind me snapped my head around. It was the female raven. Some of her feathers were ruffled and torn away. Her left wing stuck out awkwardly. She looked up at me sadly, croaking quietly. I pulled my food scraps out, extending my hand towards her. She nibbled at them quickly, not being careful to avoid my palms. I tried to examine her wing while she ate, but she wouldn't let me get a close look at it. It seemed that she was having a hard time using it. After much coaxing, she raised a foot, climbing onto my forearm. Her intelligent eyes peered into mine. She seemed to be looking into my soul. I knew that if she was unable to fly, she would have no chance of survival. While she was still perched on my arm, I began walking towards my house, feeding her scraps as she went. I tried to silently communicate to her that I was trying to help, hoping that she understood that I meant her no harm. To my surprise, she stayed, never leaving my arm the whole way home. I brought her into the garage, emptying out a large cardboard box for her to nest in. She observed from the floor, curiously watching as I filled it with sticks and leaves. She seemed to find the nest adequate, hopping to the edge and looking down at it before settling in. Getting my mother to allow our new guest was a tough sell. She was less than thrilled that I had brought a bird into our house, telling me how filthy ravens were. She eventually caved in, seeing how emotional I got when she told me I'd have to release her. She let me keep her in the garage on the condition that once her wing had healed, I would set her free. I assured her that I would, thanking her profusely. She made steady progression with her injuries, gradually gaining back the use of her wing. I named her Mira. After a while, she even began responding to her name. I sat with her and practiced saying words to her. A little-known fact, ravens are capable of speaking, much like a parrot. After hearing me say it enough, I was greeted with a crackly, "Hi," one evening. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. We practiced other words, eventually getting "wow" and "bye" down. After a month, her wing had healed enough for her to fly short distances again. By then, my mom had grown quite fond of Mira. She would ride around on my mother's shoulders while she worked in the yard, the two of them chattering away. It was the first time either of us had smiled this much since my father passed. When she was flying freely again, I helped Mira build a nest in the tree across from my bedroom window. She would fly back and forth, grabbing a snack from my sill, then retreating to her nest and singing her songs. She never stayed away for long, always returning to greet me every time I arrived home from school. We accompanied each other on excursions behind the house, Mira flying above me and perching on branches as I meandered through the animal trails. It was safe to say she was the best friend I ever had. We had both experienced crippling loss and had found an unlikely camaraderie in the aftermath. Now, you most likely didn't expect to be reading so much about my raven friend, and as the title suggests, there is much more to this story. So without further ado, here are the events that led me to a killer.